That's Wednesday evening, the December the 8th, and that's, generally speaking, Eamon, is the start of the official celebration for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose in a way that's the way it is.
Yeah.
It's the 49th week of the year. It's a pretty historic day, this.
Mm-hmm.
In many ways, I think it's this day 40 years ago that John Lennon was shot dead in New York.
Right.
And it's also
Historic.
Historic. It's also the week that the Anglo-Irish Treaty was signed, giving us partition. It was Tuesday the 6th of December. It was, and 100 years ago on that day, Rose Diver from Melton was born. Sorry?
Monday the 6th of December.
100 years ago, Francis, it was the 6th of December was on a Tuesday, is what I'm trying to get across here. So after that bit of interference, let's move on and look at what's been going on in this windswept island. Windy conditions, anything blown away about Creasla?
Oh,
Everything well rooted down?
everything rooted down, a few trees here and there, but overall I think we got away relatively light. Although it was lively enough for part of the night.
I think lively would be probably the apt description, but it wasn't really that serious.
Not devastating.
There's no way comparable to the storms and the gales that were blown up by the media all day yesterday.
Aye.
And
I don't think we got the brunt of what,
at
what the
half
weather
past
was.
two yesterday, Darragh O'Brien, who took charge of the country's services for the duration of the emergency, no better man for the job, because he said, I think around 2:30, we're only halfway there. You know, it was almost a sort of a note of caution. And people living alone and in very isolated spots were quite scared by all of this hype that was going on all day yesterday. Of course, there has to be warnings about gales, but so often in this country, all these warnings turn out to be damp squibs, and yesterday's in many parts of Donegal turned out to be exactly like that. It's not for the first time, but questions have to be asked about her whole system of weather forecasting, because this has been going on now for a week. Just living out in the windswept Fannet Peninsula, where I do, not far from Fannet Lighthouse, our worst weather conditions of the past 7 days was Thursday night into Friday morning, and stuff was blown away, and stuff kept blowing away for 45 hours. Yet there wasn't a mention of that. The storm was meant to come on Friday, so what happened to us was several hours ahead of that. So our weather forecasting models are nowhere near accurate, and we've been here, we've done that, but the southwest did take a fair whacking around Cork, Kerry, Limerick, Clare, and into Waterford, Tipperary, and across into Wexford. Lots of pictures across all the media today, just showing up people out walking on the promenades and places like that, and people driving. And I suppose it's not advised to be out in those kind of conditions, but people look back on afterwards, they just huddled down in fear of their lives, literally, after hearing all those loud complaints being echoed about the worst expectations and the frightening.
Do you remember a number of years back, John, there were the late councillor and hotelier Sean McAnuff brought up a case against that too, against where he was a weather warning he felt was unnecessary and resulting in cancellations of, I think it was a series of weekend concerts he had planned. You know,
that's right.
So that's gone back, and that's not there yesterday. That's a couple of years back.
And that was back in the day. It was more summertime back then. I think it was one of those bank holiday weekends, either June or maybe August, and it felt it kept people from Dublin from coming up to Donegal.
Yeah, closed. Yeah. He was again critical of the forecast and models, as you say.
We don't seem to have a model of accuracy. I heard Barabest, and it was named after Barabest from BBC Northern Ireland, because it was our turn to name the storm. I don't know who's going to name next week's, but the fear that was instilled in people yesterday was quite unnecessary, I would have felt. And it was being done so by the top officials, you know, at every level, from weather watchers to local authority officials to ministers even. It was all gloom and doom, and the risk was that if you didn't stay in the house, you risked potential damage either to yourself or to your property. And like I've heard from people today who felt there was very little to what really did happen. I happened to be talking to a lady in the post office down at Ballylar who lives in a very, very windswept, isolated spot, and said, look, well, if that was a storm last night, we didn't hear it. And it's just like that. All from last Friday morning, we did have a gale out in that area.
We had a couple of power outages. Our power was out twice, but thankfully not for too long.
We've had big power outages, but like in the greater order of things, with millions of people connected to power, you've had 60 and 70,000 out, and on the bigger scale of things, that is not a huge number. Probably ESB networks have done a lot of work in recent years upgrading their systems, and it's paying off for them, But all the while out along the coast, it's much more frequent because gales are hit harder out there. We're also looking at NEFID and asking the question, have they been gagged by the government, and why? And what kind of a state are we leading ourselves into? Because honestly, I do believe that they've been gagged. Because both Neil Martin and Leo Varadkar's lame duck excuses don't add up. They felt that the whole system needed to be much more coordinated. I would have thought that we needed some coordination to keep politicians off the bloody media and let the real experts do the talking. Like Tony Holohan and the rest of those, they are the experts on it. Now, they've been noticeably absent in the past week, ever since that comment that the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Roland Glynn, made about the safety of schools for children as far as COVID is concerned. That seemed to strike a raw nerve in the government. This is a government that's different to any other that we've ever had. Unfortunately, they're here to stay like the bad weather for another while. And unless it's all on message and unless it's all positive, nothing else counts. And that's the way it happened last week with the Make a Redress thing being talked up across the weekend in such a manner that you just felt sorry for those who were trying to pull the wool over our eyes, because it was Make a Redress. We saw it on social media, we heard it on wireless and all that kind of thing. There's no which way that we had got it right, but certain individuals in government had the message that it had to be talked up. Now we see now that the minister has issued a statement today, and one of the big outs for the supporters of the Make a Deal was that the sliding scale would probably be abolished and would be revisited by the group, the Chartered Surveyors of Ireland. Darragh O'Brien sent out a statement earlier on today that simply says that the grant calculations methodology will be based on the cost per square foot of rebuilding the existing house, with costings to be set by me in consultation with the Society of Chartered Surveyors of Ireland. Now, that puts to bed any notion that we would just run to the Chartered Surveyors in February and they'll just deliver a better deal. That's not what they do. They just simply do advice. But the homeowners have been so scathing of the deal that the politicians who were making all the noise and doing all the running to sell it last weekend seem to have moved on to some other area to do some other sales pitch in it, and we wait for more from them. But those are some of the things we're talking about there. We're just talking about has the NEFID team been gagged, and what's next here? Have you any views on that?
Well, they seem to be, as you say, the when they're on message, it's there's very little scope for kind of deviating from that. And I would say in some ways it nearly seemed like a welcome relief that the weather was causing the news blackout in the last day, just to shift the emphasis off that for a minute. But on a note, actually, the amount of interactions I've seen online and elsewhere about the Micah homeowners and things like that, current weather, there was a great many people turning their thoughts to those people living in those shoddy houses that are barely hanging together. So you can imagine if you're in the news non-stop for seeking your Micah redress, that's at the forefront of your mind for the protection of yourself and your family.
It has to be. And
yet when you have a constant weather warning coming in like that there of destruction to property, they're not living in safe houses, a lot of these people. This is at the heart of it too. So there's you have to be very careful of that.
Darragh O'Brien didn't have any word of comfort for any of those people yesterday. That's strange, but Darragh's usually up front there. Yeah. Like as far as the media goes, I mean he's the man to come out and talk it up at all costs, and regardless of the cost, it's going to work. Most of the time it doesn't. Let it be setting a cap on home rents and all that kind of thing. It never seems to work out quite right for him. But
it'll be interesting to see what happens now with the rollout of the vaccines for the younger cohort, because we've seen what happened with the way that the kind of cack-handed way the messaging was out, rolled out for schools, kids wearing masks. Do you know what I mean? So that you'd wonder now what way that will, because there'll inevitably be a pushback against. A lot of parents will have a lot of concerns about this unless the messaging.
The Taoiseach in the Dáil yesterday on his feet been challenged by the Labour leader about the whole issue of the no shows for the booster dose. And on drive time, almost immediately afterwards, they were inundated with calls that people were getting called incorrectly, people that weren't even 3 to 4 months past their second injection. People who already had got their booster dose were now being called again, and the whole thing seems to be all over the place. And Miguel Martin will probably have to come out next week. He said out of 200,000, I'm just, this is a verbatim thing, I'm just remembering off the top of my head, he said there was 90,000 no shows. Apparently that may be very, very, very wide off the mark, because wherever the administration of this system has gone to, it seems to have gone completely astray. Because if you've got your booster dose, there's no reason why you should get another call.
Concerns of duplication, I think, is which the figures a bit mad.
You see, that's a very simplified version. What kind of figures have they? I mean, I can't understand that there's so many errors could occur. But then again, you know, the vaccination centres had been gradually reduced in numbers. You know, you saw the one in Letterkenny that had a very big output of people passing through it. Like, okay, numbers dwindled, but it moved down to a very, very small location, probably with very much reduced staff. People employed there probably had gone back to their original occupations. I'm sure that applied right down the country as well. So now all of a sudden they're almost forced to revisit everything that they've already done. The PU payment is one case in point, apart from the vaccines, and apart from how you manage and administer these things. But I'll tell you what, we're going to move on and look at Christmas lights. Lots of them switched on. We got a list there, I've lost it somewhere. Chrysler, Ramelton, Milford, Jerry Durning and Sharon Friels. These lights out at Drummond Bridge there, out at Drummond, just past the school. These are privately monitored and supported lights by Jerry and Sharon. And there's lovely pictures of those, as there are from Chrysler, from Ramelton, Milford, and all of these places. Tirconaill is switched on as well. Pretty heavy weather for lights. I
felt for all, like you see people up ladders every town and village you go through. There was somebody up a ladder somewhere nearly, you know, looking for either decorations or putting up lights or whatever. So yeah, hopefully.
Just looking at the lights in Ramelton last night now, they seem to have weathered the storm quite well, although they're probably sheltery in there along the mall, but there's a lot of high ground up at the top of Church Street as well. And just hopefully the weather settles down and just so people can just get out and see the lights. And we're just talking about Mary Workers lights, probably with the highest altitude in the county. And unfortunately, her site, which is this year near a Bumbulance, one of the biggest charges, and it was the subject of a theft last Saturday night, sometime around 9 o'clock or thereabouts. Close to €400 was in the donation box. But anyway, a man was detained after some good detective work and after very good CCTV footage emerging, and a man has been charged with that, and he will appear in court, I think, this day next week again, and he's going to enter, I think it's a guilty plea. Yeah, there's a plea expected, all right. So that should be a big deterrent, but it should also encourage people to get out and support those kind of charitable functions, because Mary Horsky and Michael they leave no stone unturned. And that's the second time there was an attempt to interfere with their lighting. Yeah. Unfortunately,
it's a sad reflection.
It's a sad reflection on society, generally speaking, and like all you can say is just you hope it doesn't happen again, and you just sympathise with them that all will go well. Anyway, that is that. There, you're going to visit Dunfanny and Chrysler now for the next bit.
I was down there last Thursday morning down at the workhouse in Dunfanny, which is thriving, I suppose you could say. It seems to be doing very, very well. They had a very active Christmas craft fair, and they had a range of events. But I was down to chat to the new manager of the centre, Claire Williamson. She took over the job there in September, and she has a strong background in tourism herself, and just a recent graduate only this year of a master's degree in tourism from LYIT as well. So she is in working with the team there, along with their newly appointed heritage officer as well, Roisin McNally. So they have great plans for the place. They're trying to take it above and beyond what is the traditional busy 3 months of the year to a centre that has things all throughout the year. And already they've sort of proven that. They're rebranding the place. They've had almost every weekend, I would say, since through the autumn into the winter. There's been something on every weekend, and
it's always going to be hard work to do that.
Yeah,
the likes of the Lighthouse at Farnhead, they have their accommodation, which is equally as popular today as it is in the middle of the summer, and they have 3 units there. And I suppose they're booked out up until Easter and beyond that. But I suppose in Dunfanny you have a passing trade there in on the N56, so traffic's all going through the town's pretty well known. So the workhouse has been there operating away successfully for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But apart from that, you're also looking at the at developments at the new soccer pitch.
There's just a simple little affair that we have a photograph. I suppose it's a simple. And there are 2 posts sticking out of the ground with a few tracks in the sand leading over to it. But that will mark the entrance to the new Dunfanny Youths football pitch after a fairly lengthy process that's been quite high profile at times, I suppose. The club, after all of that, will look to next year now with greater optimism and actually a good sense of purpose, in the sense that they know now that the planning has been...
But it'll take a while to get that...
Oh, they'll need everything. They need money. And
before the first game is kicked off on it.
Yeah.
You're talking a couple of years away, are you?
You could be, but that said, they're looking to get the playing surfaces in so they can get playing matches again. If you look, they have fairly humble background in the grounds they had in Kill, and they still have a couple of those porta cabins, so I'd imagine once they get that. But you can have a look at that and find out a wee bit more about that. It's it'll make for... a better year ahead for them, knowing that they will have a home to settle the club in, which is
and we wish them every success with that, and we'll keep you posted on it, as we will about most other things in the area. And we're looking at a piece here, 40 years from Jim Lynch and Friends. This is the Letterkenny annual, one of the best buys in magazines at this time of the year, because Jim Lynch has provided a magnificent service there. He's pictured with Liam O'Donnell and Lewis Toy at the launch of it, and it straddles 40 years, is a long way back to the legend of the Farfast and the Letterkenny Folk Festival. Huge amount of legend and history around it there. It's a bit like, apparently this year, I haven't seen it yet, it's just like reeling in the years. And a lot of writers, and indeed we remember a former contributor to the Tribune, Brian Smeaton, who would have contributed to it as well and was a big supporter of it. And they're saying there that since 1997 that 30 charities have benefited from money raised by the Northwest 10K, those kind of things here. There's people like Eric White in there, and see mentions of
those early editions
Brian
now,
McDade and Dermot Doherty, recalling their finger-licking days in the Four Lanterns. I thought they were in journalism, so there you are.
Good man.
So best wishes to the Letterkenny Annual. I'm sure it has its own following, and I'm amongst them.
They'll be sent all over the world.
Be sent all over the world, yeah. But anyway, we're going to back to the front page because we're just 18 and a half minutes into our schedule. Councillors reject Mica remediation plan. This, of course, is from last Monday's meeting and the public criticism and the analysis of it, which shows that it's anything but 100%. And we had that comment from the Minister's office clarifying things. And then we're quoting Frank McBrearty extensively this week, Frank is just not all that happy with what he's seeing. I'm looking for page 2 at the back of it, and I can't see it, but he doesn't see this. He sees much bigger issues with this than the sliding cost thing. He sees the issues around actually getting access to it. And it's all there on page 1, page 2 of the Tribune. And he's simply saying that the visual assessment of the threshold of damage would see engineers only taking stock of cracked walls, and in effect the homeowners would be given the estimated cost of such repairs. But see, like that one is a long way to play out.
Yeah.
But we're going to back a couple of stories I just want to mention on page 2. There's still no plans to restore the staffing numbers at the ophthalmic service. We're talking about the physicians here. Paddy McLaughlin has been following this quite a bit all throughout the summer, asking the right questions, but getting answers that kind of leaves us wondering. So we'll be following that again. At this point, there's confirmation that they've been given formal approval at the HSE for the recruitment of a consultant medical ophthalmic surgeon or an ophthalmologist for Donegal. Now, this is a medical position. It's not. I suppose the wish would be that Donegal would have its own ophthalmic surgeon.
Yeah.
Now there's a surgeon that visits from Sligo, but he's a busy man. He's
a full-time appointment.
Yeah, a full-time appointment. We don't have that. But numbers on the waiting list are very, very high. And in the meantime, we're going to follow that because more questions will be going back into the HSE to get further clarifications. We're looking here at developers in the dark who were planning to lay in Letterkenny, and we're just talking about this site on the south of the Swilly there at Leck and Scribbly, and the developers representatives from the developers have gone on public record to query why these delays are ongoing with the planning office and allowing them to go ahead, given the fact that Irish Water appears to have given the go ahead for the wastewater and the public water supply there. It's a long story, but we also have a picture there on the front of the Tribune. It's the 1500th anniversary of the birth of St. Columkill, and there's a picture from St. Columba's Church in Massman at the unveiling of a statue and mural there on Tuesday night. And Father Pat McGarvey's pictured there with John Blaney, Katrina Sweeney, Eileen McGettigan, who painted the mural, and Liam McDevitt, who sculpted the statue. Lovely picture.
That's good, yeah.
There's more of that inside the paper, and there's more of this time next week. Until then, thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.